And we're back. Welcome. Today we're gonna actually crank up the booktube by talking about books. Yay. And today we're gonna go down history lane. We're gonna be talking about the imprint from Dodd Mead and Company, Red, Red Badge Detective. Yay, you did it. Um, and this was an imprint focusing on mystery novels, and we're going to go in a little deep dive here about them. But first, while I'm cranking up the screen share here, I'm going to assume not everybody knows what an imprint is. So before we get on with our Red Badge Detective books, let's talk about what an imprint is. Basically, it's like an umbrella from a publishing house perspective. So you have the main publisher on top, in this case, Dodd Mead and Company, and they want to market specific books or a niche or a categorization of some kind to make you, the reader, the collector, the seller of books, able to identify what kind of book you're holding on your hand, either by a cosmetic thing or the imprint name itself. Um, they give a couple examples in this AI pull up here, like Penguin Random House. Um, you got vintage books, which is not meaning that it's old or anything. It's actually the imprint company's name. They they deal in specifically reprints of books, so things that did really well. They put out a couple print runs a year just to keep those sales going because it's a constant, consistent good seller. And then you have Del Rey. They're going to focus more on science fiction and fantasy. There's all these different names, but they're all technically Penguin Random House. Again, publishing house has to do what they got to do to make sales. And if putting different names on them or putting special imagery on them makes them sell, that's what they're going to do. So let's talk about the Red Badge of Courage Detective series. So again, from Dodd Mead and Company, these were mystery books, and they were kind of snobby about it. They said this is the best of the best as far as mysteries have to go. And they put a little red badge stamp on it, and not necessarily red, I'll get more into that later. But they wanted to basically say we're putting out highest top-notch quality. Any other mystery you read is inferior. And this ran from about the 1930s to the 70s, about 40 years. Um, and keep in mind, Dodd Mead went defunct about in the 80s at some point. But it was considered one of the longest running imprints for the time period that they were around in. And we're going to go over some of the things they did. Again, it's publisher snobbery, but to the end of gaining money and sales from the consumer, right? So I understand why they did it, but reading back on these little artifacts, it's very, very amusing to me. Um, so let's crank up the screen share again. And I'm going to read you something that they did, and they started putting them in their books for this imprint line. So first of all, they didn't even come up with this. They literally stole it, but they put it in quotes. They didn't really steal it, right? From the Saturday Review of Literature, which says the Dodd Mead imprint has long been a pretty good hallmark in detective and mystery stories. When you see one with that publisher's name on the back, you can usually depend on it. Think about that. That it's a reliable, trusted. You got a major publication saying you could trust these guys with this imprint. Somewhere in the editorial offices of that firm is some hard-faced Legree who understands the rather exacting requirements. So they're saying they did research, know what they're doing. You could trust them. This is before the internet. And you have something in a newspaper, and now you're seeing it in their book as well, being quoted from said newspaper line. Who are you going to disagree with? You kind of have to take it as fact, right? Especially if you haven't read it and it's your first time experiencing this imprint. That's hysterical to me. I mean, it's like you could really trust these guys. It wouldn't work in today society, I don't think. Um, that's a hard bill to swallow. But back then, you're not going to question it. You're just going to go with it. So then from Dodd Mead and Company themselves, they go on to say each year, thousands of detective manuscripts are submitted to American publishers. Only by the most careful selection can a standard such as Dodd Mead has set be maintained. Now, in order to aid the reader in choosing a mystery of whose merit he may be certain in advance, the hard-faced editors are placing a red badge on these detective stories, which they are willing to recommend unreservedly to the most discriminating reader. Excuse me. So, so that's great. That's really great. Basically, they're saying we're doing all the hard research. We're reading all the crap, and we're receiving a lot of crap. But they don't really say that. They say across all publishing houses, but they're kind of hinting at that they're doing it, but not really. And we're only going to put out the best of the best. We have criterion. They don't tell you what this criterion is. I'll get into that in a minute, which gets more fun. Um, and that readers are picky, and we know you're picky, but we're picky too. So here you go. Here's this book. You can trust it unequivocally. Just flat out trust it. Okay. So I'm going to let you know that again, they ran from the 30s to the 70s, and they put it on all the mysteries they put out. So there wasn't like it, well, at least into the 60s. So about 30 years of just any mystery they cranked out, bam, Red Badge Detective. And it was no real separation in any other mystery. So you could have a first time author that gets a Red Badge Detective story, or you could have a well renowned one like Agatha Christie gets a Red Badge Detective. That notwithstanding, they're very collectible, especially if you can find them with the dust jacket, as most of them are in hardback form. Um, it's just it's just a way to sell books, guys. That's all that is. And no faulting them. They got to make a dollar. I don't really fault them for that. It's just so much arrogance behind this imprint. I kind of love it and hate it at the same time. But let's go back into our deep dive. And we're sharing. So I took a look, and there's not much out there on what their quote unquote criterion is. But what I did find seems to match up because a lot of these guys, I think all of them are dead, who were part of this review process to find what cranked out. So it's more of conjecture of a guy who talked to a guy who knew the guy, and this is what he said. So the giant game of telephone is probably one of those things that's lost to history. So take what I'm about to show you with a grain of salt, but assume or don't assume it to be true. Because again, it's a guy from a guy who knows a guy from me who found stuff online from what other people were saying that's all conjecture, now sharing it with you all. So make your best informed decision on what the actual criterion was. But I read these points, which I'm about to show you, and they're great, let me tell you. So so they need to meet all 8 points in order to get the red badge stamp, right? And yeah, I mean they're quoting. They got a lot of it from Reddit. I got mine from a source, and all the bolded parts are from a forum source. The stuff after is not, however. But let's go over these points. A sense of reality is imperative, and what it means is the story must feel believable and grounded. That's point number one. Um, So no fever dreams. Okay, no, haha, we got you. And number two is the book must be written in competent English. I would hope it would be written in competent English. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of incompetent English, but I'm glad to know that competent English was applied to get your red badge detective stamp. But what they're really meaning is the prose must be of high quality. So I guess to me, this really means is we don't want to have to do a whole lot of editing on your book to make it salvageable. Which, okay, fair. Number three, the climax of the story should preferably come as a surprise. And what they're meaning, they're saying, is the final resolution should be unexpected and shocking to the reader. I mean, when you're reading a mystery book, that's the whole game, right? You're guessing who's the murderer, who's the robber, who's the kidnapper. It could be anybody. Who done it? I mean, who done it, right? But uh, I mean, that's just kind of implied. Otherwise, it's not really a mystery, I guess, unless you're ruling out books where you know who the person doing the crime is off the get-go, and you're learning their story of why they're probably locked up or they're being held at gunpoint by the detective, kind of like a flashback of the endings up front. So, okay, fair. Number four, the novel should avoid banalities. The plot and characters should not rely on tired or overly familiar tropes. I mean, in the 30s, things were just kind of getting cranked out there for mysteries, especially we're entering the pulp and pre-World War II into war to post-war stuff. Because again, 30s to 70s, right? So that's kind of a hard one to do. That one to me is actually a real standard. Like we want unique and originality here. We don't want you to copy paste a set formula, which if you're trying to crank out the best of the best, that is a good point. I agree with number four. Number five, action must move steadily. The plot should maintain a consistent pace and avoid getting bogged down. So we don't want boring mysteries where they're sipping tea and they're going on and on about cousin Edwina and Uncle Charles. They don't want any small chat. They just want the story to go and go. Excuse me. And I guess, but some of those little things they're not wanting, they have their charms that kind of build character development. But if they're just wanting a really boilerplate or hard boiled noir kind of vibe, okay, sure, why not? I mean, it's your imprint. You can have that scope narrowed down. The point number six, the detective is the most important figure in the story. The novel should center on the detective's actions, deductions, and perspective. Um, okay. But going back to point number four, you're kind of pigeonholing, I think, your authors here who are getting submitted to that kind of standard, which makes originality a lot harder to do when you're confining them. But I get their point. They especially if they're gonna do a whole entire series run of like 10 books or something. Um, that's a lot easier to sell than a one-off. But I kind of disagree with it. Should they be a prominent character in the story? Yeah. Um, but not necessarily the main figure. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to have a mystery where you're the criminal, right? And then the mystery part is which person's going to catch you. Kind of like a reverse detective trying to find the bad person. We have the bad person who, at the end, we find out who's the good person that got him or killed him. I think that'd be kind of fun. That's me though. Um, the crime should be murder or potential murder. The stakes must be high, involving a serious crime. Well, the explanation and the boilerplate rule don't kind of go together. There's plenty of mysteries where murder's not the main focus. There are different crimes to be had or different villainary activities. So I like the explanation. I don't like the hard rule. So if it was just the stakes must be high, okay, cool. I like that. Again, you're trying to have an imprint with a standard with the Red Badge Detective series, so that the stakes must be high. That's a high standard. I agree. Let's do it. But just pigeonholing yourself into murder or potential murder or plotting to do murder. Yeah. Again, it kind of goes in number four. You're holding yourself back. Number eight, it must be entertaining. No, no, you can't have that. I need boring books. Boring all the time. Boring is safe, it's comfy, love it. At the end of the day, the book must be compelling and enjoyable to read. Yeah, solid. Number eight, solid. It's kind of like, why is this on your list? I don't get it. But these are the eight rules and regulations they put on the Red Badge Detective books. So, and again, it's conjecture. There's no definitive. We don't have a video recording or any kind of documentation proving one way or the other. But people who have done research and are big time collectors and or interested in Dodd Mead Company as a whole have said this was the rules they had. So it's implied these were them. Again, I think of these, number four, really good. Number five's okay. I mean, it's got to move at a steady pace. Not necessarily agree with it entirely, but I get why it's there. Disagree with number six entirely. Um, Again, number seven, I would have liked them just to use the definition and not the boilerplate rule. Number eight didn't need to be on the list at all. Number one, believable, grounded, but we'll let it slide. The competent English one, that's just funny to me. But yeah, yeah. So again, goes in the arrogance of selling books. Our books are so good. Here are the eight rules for them. And we have standards, and here's what they are. Okay. And as somebody who's just getting started in this era, it kind of makes sense that they can kind of be this way and they can refine it over time. I don't think they ever did. I think it was just a complete marketing ploy to put the little stamp on to sell more books. Not really a this is what we're doing behind the scenes in actuality. I'm sure they did this from time to time, but yeah. So going on, let's get back to the screen share here. Where to get? Alrighty. So this article here that I found from Pretty Sinister, that's a cool name for a blog, by the way, probably has the best article written on it, but 2016. That is way back. Way, way back. There is not much on this. What was this thing? Other than you see this logo a lot from Dodd Mead and Company, their older books. But there's very little. But this is probably the best one I have found. If there's a better one, let me know in the comments down below, please. I would love to read it. So in this article, he wrote it, and what I found amusing, if we go back over here, there was some questioning on what these numbers mean, and somebody answered it down in the comments, which I found interesting. That was the address or assumed address for one of their old buildings. It's very detailed down below, and I'll link this article down in the comments here as it is a good read. But the logo had different things, but it normally was red, but there are other colors. So sometimes with lightning bolts, sometimes with these three vertical lines, sometimes with the Sherlockian home guy, sometimes out as we're seeing here. Now, what I like about it is their dust jackets. I thought their dust jackets were great. A lot of cool dust jackets. See, we got the little red badge here. Again, it's not red. In this one, it is gray. And it does have an interesting thing. I think they did it 5 times. They actually had a competition where you could submit, and the winner would get a cash prize, and you get a book published. By the way, that cash prize was not very much money at all. I think one guy got $2,000, another guy got 1,000. Some of them went on to write more books. Some of them, the one and done kind of deal. But yeah, I'll link the article for you all to read as it's interesting. So this is the logo I got behind me right now. We have the Red Badge Detective, Dodd Mead, the Sherlockian guy, bright banana yellow, and the red outlining here. which is neat. Here's a bigger image of what we were looking at earlier. Let me shrink that down slightly. Mystery detective. And then here's one where it's stamped on the actual cover of the book, and it's not. It may or may not be on the dust jacket, depending on when they were doing this, but it's nice that they actually stamped this on. Again, you kind of want to find these books with their dust jacket, as that enhances the value and or the collectability nature of it. This is not red. It's a red book, so, but not a red badge. Red book, not red badge. Interesting. So I'm going to let this one slide. But anyway, here we have green and yellow. And here we have silver and blue. This one's legit, the red badge on a black book. And we got them on the spines here as well. Again, they're all missing their dust jackets. This one's yellow and blue and on the spine. Woohoo. This one is, I don't know if that's red. That's more plum brown to me, I guess, than red, but I guess we'll let this slide. We got different shades of red. We got like fire engine truck red over here, and we got blood red over here. So kind of evolution on depending on what they were doing. Here's inside. So the end pages, they got the lightning bolts. I like the lightning bolts, by the way. And then they printed it on each one here. So you immediately know it's the Red Badge Detective book. Here we got it, looks like on the recommend other books section. And again, it's not red in this case, but black. Looks like we got the lightning bolts over here. So I'm going to assume it's going to be red there. And again, got the yellow and a red book. This one's an Agatha Christie. And oh, look, they said this is a red badge mystery. Your badge is yellow here. Anyway, see how I'm slightly triggered by this? Oh, silver badge. I gotta admit, I kind of like the silver too. It's kind of got the police vibe to it. Here we have it on the back of the dust jacket, actually on the dust jacket, and we got it on the spine. Red here, black here. But I get it. You can't really put red on a red background. It'll blend in too much and it won't be distinct. And again, they're trying to go for being distinct so you immediately know what it is. And they branded it in such a way that you want to trust it. It's a good quality book. It's a solid read. You're not going to go wrong with this book. That may not necessarily be the case. Not all Red Badge Detective books, I would say, would hold up today. But there's a lot of famous people. Again, Agatha Christie probably being at the top of that list. Trust the author more than the badge, right? And speaking of her, here's another one of her books with the black badge. So we're going to end the screen share there. And yeah, it's just one of those things for its period made total sense because everybody else was doing it. A lot of the publishers had their own thing. This is just one on the Red Badge Detective from Dodd Mead and Company. Again, a company that is that's been defunct since the 80s. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little trip down history lane. You may have seen them before and just had no idea what they actually meant. And now you know what they mean. And again, this is as much as I could cobble together because there's very, very little info out there. Again, I'll link that neat article down in the description along with the 8 points here. And I hope you were entertained. If you were, let me know in the comments. If you have some more information about this imprint, let me know in the comments. Again, we have a Patreon where I have source material for this and other things that you can sign up for. We got weekly meetings and all that fun stuff. So if you like what I'm doing here, feel free to check out the Patreon if you want. And until next time.